Welcome back to Making Men Academy. Today, we're going to talk about something I find very fascinating. We're going to talk about understanding and overcoming your fears, but from an angle that I find very interesting and fascinating. And then we're going to do this by looking at personality types. Different people have different personality types, as you probably know. And I know what you might be thinking. Isaiah, this is just like astrology, but for Christians. I don't really think so, and here's why. Because of the way that I personally do stuff and interact with people. I've always categorized people and kind of put them into buckets. And that sounds really cold, but what I mean is I've always looked at people and inside of people said, what is this person? What makes them tick? What is so important to them? What are their fears? Like we're talking about today, understanding yourself and overcoming your fears. What are some of the things that are important to them? What makes them do what they do? Who is this person genuinely on the inside? That's what I care about and want to know. And so I've always found that there are consistencies inside of people. Even I'll be like, oh, this person, wow, this is a squeaky table right here. Like this person has this type of face. Their face kind of has this structure, this look, this certain tone to it that they carry about on their face when they interact with people. And this person over here has that same kind of look on their face. So that's almost like the same face, the same facial structure. And they even have the same, they end up kind of being similar inside of their personality. So I've always found it fascinating, and that's how I know this kind of stuff isn't wonky-do. I think that actually it is nicely, solidly evidence-based stuff, and it helps us understand people. I have personally only benefited from doing this, and it has nothing to do with any sort of stars or crazy stuff like that. This is just cold hard facts coming from polls and coming from research, so I'm completely fine with that. Now that is out of the way. Understanding and overcoming your fears is a massive part of being a man. Like, if we're not doing that, we can't really execute and be a man the way we should be. And obviously, understanding and overcoming fears isn't going to be something that we do very well all the time. I know it's not, personally, just from my own life. I mean, how many of us have had those situations? That's kind of like a main theme in life, a main thread in life. But this is a very helpful way of understanding how that actually works and plays out, and we can see what's important inside of us so that then we can go and determine, oh, here's the things we need to fix, here's the things we need to work on, those types of things. So let's get into this. The 9 types that there are inside of the Enneagram. And here's the difference I found between the MBTI, Myers-Briggs type whatever. Here's the difference between that and the Enneagram. I think that from just looking at it, observing it, spending time with both, I think that the Enneagram really comes from a place of fear-based interpretation of a person, where the 16 personalities, the MBTI stuff, actually looks more at someone's intentions and what they aim to do in a good way. So it's kind of like looking at the negative aspects of a person for the Enneagram stuff and looking at the positive aspects of a person from the MBTI tests. And really, I think it comes down to what is pushing a person and what is pulling a person. What is pushing a person? That's like the fears that's pushing them at their backs, that drives them to do certain things. And then other times with the MBTI, it is what is pulling this person and calling to this person that they say this is an amazing purpose, a greater purpose. That's how I interpret the world. And so looking at those things is funny because I can say, oh, I see myself fitting into this so plainly and clearly. It's just really, it makes life so much easier. So let's go over the 9 types for the Enneagram, since they do focus more on fear-based situations and fear-based actions, which are also good to understand. We should understand those things about ourselves. Let's look at this. Type 1, underlying fear, is imperfection. So these are the perfectionistic people. That's like the big thing. They don't want to be imperfect. So if I were interacting with someone who is a perfectionist, and I understand, oh, you're a perfectionist, then when I'm talking to them about Christ, I would go into detail with them about that. Why do you feel like you need to be perfect? Who said you need to be perfect? Well, did you know that there's actually no way you can ever possibly be perfect? But Christ was perfect, and he gives that freely to you. So looking at it in that way, you can help this person see, oh, this is what Christ does. And then number 2, underlying fear is being unloved or unwanted by others. Hey man, Did you know that Christ loves you exactly how you are? I've heard this before. There was a viral audio that was going around for a while, and things come and go all the time. But it was like this kid asks a pastor, like, hey, do I need to clean up my act before I come to Christ? And the pastor said, well, do you get in the shower? Do you clean yourself off before you get into the shower? And the kid was like, no. And the pastor says, well, that's exactly how it is with Christ. You don't clean yourself up to get into the shower. You get into the shower to get yourself clean. And so for someone like this, a type 2, whose basic underlying fear is being unloved or unwanted by others, I mean, that goes for both of these, being imperfect or being unloved because of this, saying, hey, did you know that Christ loves you just the way you are? And to put the type 1 spin on that, even if you're imperfect, but just as you are right now, Christ loves you. You don't have to worry about being unloved or unwanted. He died for you to take your place, and he paid the price that you would have had to have paid because of just how much he loves you. He found a way to make it work in your favor at his own cost and penalty. Like, that is amazing to me, that you can do this and talk to someone in an effective way, which actually communicates the gospel in the way their brain thinks, understands, and interprets things. So this is madly important. So I'll just go through the list a little faster here. Type 3, underlying fear is not being valued. So that actually does look more like not intrinsic value or inherent value, but in physical value and practical value. Their skill sets, their achievements, those types of things. The achiever is what that one is typically called. So that's type 3. Type 4 is being abandoned, the fear of being abandoned. Again, unwanted, unloved. You want to be understood and loved for the individual you are. You want people to see you genuinely. And so that's almost the same thing. Hey, did you know that? All right, let's back up real quick. Type 3, if you're talking to them about Christ, and this is how I'm trying to help you guys understand, A, how I see this, and B, how I use this, and then C, here's a practical implication to help you understand the concept, because context is very helpful in these cases and just for anything in life. So type 3, if you're talking to someone that's a type 3 about Christ, this is the example I'll use for all of these, then you can say, hey, did you know that you don't have to do anything or build anything or be anything achievement-wise, because Christ literally doesn't care about that. Your good deeds are filthy rags compared to Christ. Even when you compare the good things and the bad things, none of it amounts. It's all terrible stuff still. But Christ doesn't care. Jesus doesn't care. He wants you the way you are. And that is a mind-blowing thing for a type 3, to think about it in that way. That blows my mind. All right, so type 5. We did 4, right? Yeah. All right, so 3's was being not valued for what they do, what they bring to the table, what they've achieved. 4's are not being... They don't want to be abandoned. They want to be understood for them as a person. Again, a deep soulful connection of people understanding who they are, all of their intricacies and their details. Type 5's, the underlying fear is that they won't be able to function successfully in the world. Like, that has less to do with other people, and that has more to do with how you perform for yourself. So again, that's still performance. That's still measuring success. And that could be both inside of things like their job, their career, whatever. That could also be like their relationships, their skills. Yeah, relationships, like marriage, those kinds. So that almost spans a broader scope, but it's more focused internally, which then means that it affects everything externally instead of being focused on one external position, if that makes sense. So let's keep going with this. Type 6, your bottom line fear is that everything will go wrong. That is, again, a very externally focused thing. That's an external thing, but you're focusing internally from the inside, looking out at everything instead of looking at how you look from this one aspect of the outside. This one person looking at me, not wanting me because I am not being understood or because I'm imperfect. That one person looking at me because I am unwanted by others, right? Or not being valued. Those are those kinds of things. And by the way, these are all categorized, so you'll probably see some similarities with these as we go down the lines. They're paired in 3s. So there's 9 of them. There's 3 in total for each type. It's mind, body, and then like soul, sort of kind of like that. And I'll explain a little more of that later, not in this episode. You can do the research, and I'll even link one of these tests down below. They're free for the most part, but you can at least get the basic gist of it for yourself from the free versions of these things. So that makes it super easy. Type 7, underlying fear, is pain. You fear not having options or missing out, not getting the things that you need, and having a lack and suffering as a result of that lack, from that lack of options or from missing out on potential options that you could have had. So again, that's internal. Looking externally, that's fear of these 5, 6, and 7 are fear of your internal suffering and pain. 1, 2, and 3 were fear of external judgments. And number 1 is actually grouped in with 8 and 9, I'm pretty sure. Actually, don't quote me on that. I'm getting this mixed up now, so I'm not even going to try. Normally, I know how this works, but that one confuses me sometimes. That's one of those details where I get tripped up personally, and that's just one of those things you got to work on. So, 8s, your underlying fears is being out of control. It's being hurt or controlled. You do not want to be controlled. You want to have that power for yourself. You want to have that freedom and that liberty. Your fear is betrayal, rejection, vulnerability, clingy people, sharing your needs, and connecting with others. Type 8s are almost the most difficult, in my opinion, because you're looking at this thing and immediately off the top of my head, I think, oh, like that's the kind of person who wouldn't want to have that relationship, that connection with Christ. And I don't know, I need to look at other type 8s to have specific like examples, because I love examples personally. But if you're thinking about that, they don't want that vulnerability, or they're afraid of that vulnerability. They're afraid of that connection with other people. They're very I don't want to use the word pragmatic, but sort of reserved, self-contained, and moving forwards with the things that are happening. So they're very inwardly, they're focused. It's kind of like a medium between being focused on what's outside, excuse me. It's kind of like a medium between being focused on what's inside and what's outside, going very forwards. And some of these were more of a mix than others. So that's type 8. But if I were going to talk to a type 8 about Christ, I would just love to know that he's got it under control, and that I'm just speaking from personal, like this is my personal stance here. I would love to know that he's got it under control. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to conquer anything. I don't have to lead anyone. I can still do those things, but ultimately the pressure is not on me. He's got the pressure. He's taking the burden upon himself. And he says, my yoke is light. Like, take it upon me. Take it upon yourself and find rest, because he has much lighter weight of all of that guilt, burden, and the oppression of our sins on ourselves, because he doesn't have any of those things.